Okay, so welcome all the participants in this last session of the FDP. I hope Dr. Shastri will again make it interesting and interactive as he did in his earlier session because this is a post-lunch session. So you might feel, all of the participants might feel sleepy, but you have to be awakened to get a glimpse of whatever concept and methodologies that were discussed by Dr. Shastri in the earlier session, because now it will be backed up by some case studies. So it will be really interesting. So I hand over this session to Dr. Shastri. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thanks a lot. I didn't realize that this is the last session for the course, so I have a tough job. But anyway, we are in IPL is going on. Last session is always most interesting. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so as Dr. Jadeja mentioned, in this uh, in this session, I will present a case study where we have done life cycle assessment of a particular system, and the objective is to sort of take you through the process. I explained the methodology in the first session, and in this, I sort of will give an example and go through the whole process of doing LCA, and so that will give you a better idea. Also, I will. I have two case studies, but related to municipal solid waste. But I'm thinking that I will present the first one, and then after I will show you the database and the OpenLCA interface, so that if some of you want to use it, it may be useful for you. Okay, so let's go ahead. So the case study that I'm going to present is related to municipal solid waste management, and this work was done about maybe 3 years ago, or 3 to 4 years ago, and it has been published. I will show you the reference later. So this was done with in collaboration with Professor Babu Joseph from University of Florida. He was a visiting faculty in IIT Bombay that time, and Yash was our joint student. So here we did the economic as well as life cycle assessment of municipal solid waste. Although the title says landfilling, we looked at multiple options actually. So we looked at the three different options, and I'll explain those a little later. And we took Mumbai as the case study for our life cycle assessment work. Now, municipal solid waste. The reason I have chosen this particular case study to present is because it is relevant for everybody. I have done, in fact, more of my work has been on bio-based processes, but I realized that those of you who are not chemical engineers or environmental engineers, the application may not be very relevant or interesting. So that's why I've chosen this particular example, because it is relevant to all of us. So I don't think I need to emphasize the problem related to municipal solid waste. So there's a lot of, it's a big issue in in India as well as in other countries. So globally, the average is about 1.2 kgs per person per day. That is the rate at which municipal solid waste is being generated, and it is increasing. So there has been evidence to show that as the economic condition improves, this rate increases. So some of the developed countries have a rate of 4 to 4.5 kgs per person per day. India is actually lower on this average. I think it's 0.5 right now. But we are going ahead. So in Mumbai, again, being a metro city, it's a big problem. So Mumbai, at that time when this work was done, Mumbai was generating about 8,000 to 12,000 tons per day of waste. So this included construction and demolition waste also, which was around 40%. But the rest was municipal waste. Okay, garden waste, kitchen waste, and household waste general. And unfortunately in India, and I'm sure all of you are aware of this, that municipal solid waste is not very well managed. Most of the time it is actually dumped. What we call as landfills are actually dumping grounds. They are not proper scientific landfills. So this is a big problem, and that's why we decided to work on this. Now the question is, why do we want to do an LCA here? Because if you look at the default management option of municipal solid waste, if I don't do anything, okay, if I collect the waste from my household and just send it to a dumping ground, uh, do you think that will lead to the least environment? Do you think that environmentally it is the best option? Because I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing any processing, nothing. So do you think that is the best option? Maybe you can write in the chat window. Because in the life cycle, when you develop product system, anytime you do something, there is some impact. So no, land will be required. Okay, yes, that's a good point. More if you do a lot of dumping, your land is covered. But those of you who are saying no, can you elaborate a little bit why? At least segregation is required to be done. Okay. But my point is, if I don't care about segregation, if I just dump everything, I take whatever happens actually most cases right now is everything is same. There is no segregation. Just goes to the dumping ground and just stays there. The only emissions that I can imagine are related to transportation. So why do you want to do anything more? Let's say if I'm doing composting, I'm actually adding some operations which will have some environmental impact. So why do you think we need to work on this? No suggestion. So usefulness of product to be zero, segregation source is required, landfill fires and leaching problems, okay, leachate and methane generation, great. So even I made the point in terms of environmental impact. Even if you take cost, for example, okay, cost wise, what if I do just open dumping, I only need the cost of land, whatever the land that I'm using for dumping, that is the only cost that I am incurring. There is no other cost apart from transportation, of course. But as soon as I do some operation, whether it's composting, whether it's pyrolysis or some kind of incineration, I'm adding some operations, so it incurs some cost. So it's going to be costly, and that is often an excuse given for not handling the waste properly. People, most of the time the excuse given is that the technologies are very expensive, not economically feasible. So our argument was that it appears to be economical feasible because we are not really considering the unintended or indirect impacts of improper waste management. So as one of a couple of things have mentioned in this chat window, so there are landfill fires, for example. Okay, in fact, I think 2015 or 16, I don't remember exactly, there was a big fire in Devnar dumping ground, which is the biggest dumping ground in Mumbai. And when you don't when you don't manage waste properly, it caught fire, basically, the dumping ground. And there are actually frequent small fires. That one got noticed because it was fairly big. Now, because of that fire, a lot of pollutants came out, and people in that region, surrounding the region, especially downwind, were affected. Their health was affected. The other point that is mentioned here is leachate, and I'll talk about it a little later. Leachate is basically, it contributes to water pollution. Now, if water is polluted, it is going to affect human health, it is going to affect animals, and so on. So our argument was that when we say that these technologies are not cost effective, it only appears to be because you are not really considering the harmful environmental and human health effects. So we wanted to quantify that. So that was the basis for this work, that we said that we really need to do detailed life cycle assessment to quantify the harmful effects of not doing waste management properly, and then compare with the cost. Of course, these are some of the options that we considered add to the cost, but they actually give you environmental benefit. But again, as I said in the first session, you need some quantification. So that was the background. That's why we wanted to work on this problem. So these are some of the options that are available for proper management of municipal solid waste. The basic option that you can, I mean, the one option that is commonly done in India is open dumping, which is actually not part of the list, or it's actually here. So open dumping is inexpensive. There is very little cost, but there are all these health hazards: air pollution, water pollution. There is landfilling, which is more scientific way of managing the waste. You still don't do anything with the waste; it just stays there. But there are again issues with air pollution, odor, and so on. The third option is composting. Uh, but composting can only be done with biological waste. You cannot have non-biodegradable like plastic, glass, and all. Those cannot be composted. The problem with composting is it's a very slow process and it requires land. So composting pits require about 40 to 60 days. Biomethanation again is an option only for biological material, food waste, kitchen waste, garden waste, and so on. It is also somewhat capital intensive and it's a sensitive operation. So the last set of options are thermal treatments. You either burn it to generate power or electricity, heat, or you do some pyrolysis, gasification. These are some fancy methods, but they are capital intensive. So again, all these, there are some benefits in some cases, environmental benefits, but they are expensive. So this trade-off always exists. So what we essentially wanted that towards the end of the work, we should be able to provide some kind of a decision support to the municipality. So if municipality will say that, okay, there are these 4 options, these are the costs, these are the life cycle and health impacts, can we make a decision? So that was the objective. And so as this text suggests, the objective was to analyze the trade-off between increased expenses of municipal solid waste options, treatment options, and corresponding reduced environmental impact. Now, in order to quantify this, we needed to do LCA. So in this session, I'll show the results of economics also, but I will focus more on the LCA work that we have done, given the theme of the talk. So we considered 4 options. One was open dumping, which is the default or what happens currently in most cases in India. The second is what is known as the landfill. So landfill is actually a more scientific way of managing the waste. And there were 2 variants of landfill that we considered. In one case, you just pack it, but there is no landfill gas collection and leachate treatment. In third case was a proper sanitary landfill. Okay, so let me explain the landfill concept a little bit. So this is actually the sanitary landfill. So what happens in a sanitary landfill is that you basically take huge area and you periodically convert, basically once the waste comes in, municipal solid waste comes in, you start piling it up, okay? And once you have reached a certain height, you close that particular region. So you cover that with earth, basically soil, and then there are multiple layers which have to be used. So there is a scientific procedure for doing this, and basically create some kind of a mountain which is sealed inside. Okay. And this is very commonly done in many of the Western countries, especially US. You know, all of us tend to think that US manages waste very well because you don't see the waste around, but unfortunately, it's not done very well. It is all of that waste in the US goes in landfill. It is not managed very well. In comparison, some of the European countries are actually managing municipal solid waste much more efficiently because they are doing incineration, power generation, and so on. Okay, so what happens in a landfill is you have waste material that is packed in. Now we are assuming that this is unsegregated. So there is plastic, there is glass, there is paper, there is biological material, everything is there. So when you have a situation like this where everything is packed together and sealed, it creates anaerobic condition. So there is very little oxygen there. So you create anaerobic condition. So it becomes sort of a biodigester, and because of that, you generate methane. So landfill gas, which is known as landfill gas. So it's a combination of methane and carbon dioxide. So that gas comes out actually. Once you start dumping your waste and sealing it, because of this anaerobic process, the gas is generated and it comes out. So that is known as the landfill gas. The other problem with landfill is when it rains, uh, the water will obviously percolate through this whole thing. And as the water goes down from top to bottom, it takes up some pollutants. So typically heavy metals and other pollutants with it. And that water will eventually, it becomes basically polluted water. And that is known as leachate. Okay. So leachate is basically polluted water. That is rainwater that has percolated through the column of the waste, and it has picked up some pollutants on the way. So this leachate is very hazardous. If it is disposed directly into the water bodies like freshwater bodies like river, or even it can percolate into groundwater, but it's basically very dangerous, polluting. It can lead to effects like toxicity, carcinogenicity, cancer, causing problems, and so on. So a proper sanitary landfill will have two things. One is it will collect the landfill gas that is generated, because remember, methane is a very strong greenhouse gas. The global warming potential of methane is 24. So it is 24 times more dangerous than CO2. So you don't want this methane gas which is being generated to go out. So what is commonly done is you just burn it. You might say that, okay, burning is not really a solution, and I agree with it. The only reason it is done that when you burn methane, it is converted to CO2. So CO2 is less dangerous as far as global warming is concerned. So that's why you burn it. There is research going on in converting this landfill gas into valuable products like methane and so on, but it's still not commercialized yet. So a proper landfill will have a flaring system, and it will also have a leachate collection and treatment plant. So they will collect leachate using a system of pipes underground, and the leachate is treated like you treat municipal solid waste, municipal water or sewage water, and then you purified water is disposed of. Okay, so this is a proper sanitary landfill. So this sort of summarizes what happens in each of these options that are considered. So open dumping, there is no recycling of waste, there is no composting, there is no landfill gas flaring, nothing. It's very basic operation. You just go and dump the waste. The first version of sanitary landfill is when you just have a collection and flaring system, but there is no leachate treatment. So the water is still polluted. The third option is a proper sanitary landfill where you have landfill gas collection, you are flaring the gas, you are also collecting the leachate, and you are treating the leachate, and then disposing the wastewater. And the fourth option is we assumed a very different system, which is actually promoted by a lot of municipalities, including Mumbai BMC. That you have regional composting facilities. So first of all, you segregate the waste at the source. So if you are able to segregate biological material with non-biodegradable, then you can do composting of biodegradable material. And that can be done at regional level, local level actually, at society, ward level, and so on. And the non-biodegradable waste, you send it to landfill. So at least the load on the landfill will go down. Okay, so that was the fourth option that we considered, and our objective was to do the costing of all these four options and to do a detailed life cycle assessment of these four options. Okay, any questions on this so far? Okay, so we took the case of Greater Mumbai as a case study because we wanted to get real numbers. So we looked at the population data. At that time, it was about 12.5 million, and the per capita waste generation was taken from literature. As I told you, in India, it is about zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.5 kgs per person per day. So that gave us the total municipal solid waste collected. So I told you that in Mumbai about 8 to 12,000 is generated, but about 40 to 50% is construction and demolition waste. So we ignored that for this purpose. The actual municipal solid waste, the rest of it, which is collected from the household and society level, is about 4,000. At that time, it was about 4,000. It would have gone up by now. So these were the numbers that we were dealing with. So the key assumptions that we had was first we assumed that the life of a landfill is 20 years. Okay, so we assumed that the landfill will come into operation in 2017, and you will keep adding waste to the landfill for 20 years till 2036, and then with these landfills, what happens is that they are closed, and then they are kept like that. So that closure period is going to be 25 years. That was our assumption. And the waste generation that I talked about was the number in 2016 based on this reference. But we assume certain annual growth rate because we assume that the waste will be dumped for 20 years. So obviously, the population of Mumbai will not stay the same for 20 years. The waste generation also will not stay the same. And we got these numbers from literature about the population growth rate as well as per capita waste generation growth rate. And we accounted for that to know how much waste is actually generated. The landfill itself will be constructed in 20 phases. So you will wait for 1 year. Once the 1 year is over, you seal it. Then you move to the second piece of land. And this is how it actually happens. You don't have a single huge landfill that you collect for 20 years. You have portions that you break it up into. And for leachate treatment, we assume that it is aerobic treatment, biological with air stripping and so on. Okay, so this I will skip. This is about economic analysis. So we took data from literature about various operations like landfilling, gas flaring system, leachate treatment, and basically use standard engineering economics to calculate the costs of all these options. So I will skip this in the interest of the topic for this session. Coming to LCA, let me just go back to this thing. Now, if I want to compare these options using LCA, now if you go back to the methodology that I mentioned in the first lecture, the first thing that we have to decide is the functional unit. What do you think should be the functional unit here? Okay, so I missed this question. So last option didn't have flaring because, let me answer that. The assumption there was you segregate biodegradable waste. If you do that, there is not going to be any gas generation in the landfill. Okay, so my question, coming back to my question, it is what should be the functional unit for this problem? You can go back to the examples that we looked at. 1 kg of sulfuric acid, 1 kilometer of distance driven, 1 lumen hour, or whatever. What do you think? Waste quantity treated. Okay. Waste generated. Okay, waste generated by what? During all these operations, or can you elaborate a little bit? Mumbai on a daily basis. Okay. Okay. Anything else? 1 kg of compost or something like that. Will that be a good functional unit? So let me ask you a counter question. Now, can I use 1 kg of compost as a functional unit here? It's a product, right? I mean, all the examples that I told you in the first lecture, we are looking on the products, the sulfuric acid, distance driven. Here, compost is a product. So can I use 1 kg of compost as a functional unit? Since we have an open dumping, it is also considered no. Okay. No. So let me explain. Your answer is correct. See, just go back to the previous lecture. I mentioned that is you look at the service that is provided. Okay. Now, when you are treating municipal solid waste, your objective is more on the input. You want to take care of the waste. In the other cases, the other examples that I showed in the first lecture, the objective was to produce something or get something, like sulfuric acid and so on. Uh, uh, or the driving a car, getting from point A to point B. So that was the service that we were looking for. Here, the goal is to manage waste. It is not really important what comes out of it, as far as the comparison is concerned. So that is one thing. The service that we are looking for is managing the waste. So that's why it has to be from the input side. The second thing is each of these options have different outputs. So as the point was mentioned, compost is obtained only in the fourth option. There is no other product coming out from here. All the other options, there is no product coming out. So you cannot have a compost as a functional unit because it's not even generated in the other options. So that is the point. So again, look at the service that is provided. Service here is taking care of the waste, and that's why any municipal solid waste or in general solid waste management LCA study that you would come across, it will always have 1 kg, 1 ton as a functional unit. Okay. Any question on this? Okay. So our functional unit in this case was 1 ton of MSW. Okay, one ton of MSW that is handled, and we developed the model in OpenLCA. So OpenLCA 1.5, that time 1.5 version was the latest one. So we used that OpenLCA software to develop the product system, and the impact assessment model that we used was ILCD. So this was one of the models that I mentioned in the previous lecture. It's an impact assessment model to convert inventory into impacts. So this takes care of the functional unit and some other information. The next step is the development of a product system and defining the system boundary. Okay, going back to the presentation I gave in the morning, that is the next step. So here, what I'm showing here is the system boundary for the landfilling and dumping scenario. Okay, the fourth option was involving composting, which has some different set of operations. So I'll have a different figure for that. But this dashed line is the system boundary for these options. The two options of landfilling with leachate treatment and without leachate treatment, as well as the dumping scenario. So what this tells you is the door-to-door collection of municipal solid waste is not part of the system boundary. So whatever numbers that I present later will not consider this step. We assumed in this case that we started considering this, or our boundary was at the beginning of society level waste collection. And we had a reason for that. One reason was that the door-to-door collection is mostly done using human intervention. Okay, so there are people going around from door to door. They are collecting the waste, and then it is getting together at a coming together at a society level, where it is typically picked up by the municipal solid waste management municipality trucks. So anyway, the GHG or other environmental impacts for door collection are going to be minimal because it's mostly human intervention. So that's why we ignored it. So once it is collected from the society level, the first operation is transportation. So the dump trucks that we see, they will pick up your waste and they will take it to a dump site. Okay. And where it is sent to landfilling. So there are some landfilling operations. It might undergo some size reduction and so on, or some loading unloading operation will happen. You will have some trucks doing the operation internally in the landfill. So all of that have to be considered. All of those come under landfill operations. And if you don't have any, if it's just open dumping, this is where it ends. Okay, if it's open dumping, this is your system boundary. But if you have a landfill, then if you have a flaring system, you will have to set up the flaring system, and you will generate gaseous emissions. So I told you that when you flare the gas, you are not only you are not capturing it, you just burn it and let it go. So there are going to be some gaseous emissions, and leachate will also be generated. If there is no leachate treatment, this becomes your output. But there you might have a leachate treatment plant or facility, and then you have a liquid discharge, which is basically treated water. Okay. So this is the system boundary. So this shows what all is considered. It's a very simple boundary actually, not much going on here. You just have transportation, some landfilling operations, 2 treatment systems, and that's about it. Okay. The second option was a little bit complicated because here we are saying that we are doing composting followed by landfill. So whatever we can compost, we are composting, and the rest is landfill. So here, what we said that again, door-to-door collection was not part of the system boundary, and we also assumed that the source segregation is happening at the source. So at the household level, the biodegradable and the non-biodegradable waste is separated, and based on literature, we found a typical fraction that about 51% is biodegradable in the Indian or in Mumbai. 49% is non-biodegradable. Okay. So that 51. So if I have my functional unit was 1 ton of municipal solid waste, if you remember. So if in that 1 ton, 0.51 ton will be biodegradable, and that will go to the composting site. 0.43 will go directly to the landfill because it is non-recoverable, non-biodegradable material like broken glass, plastic that is cannot be used. But as per literature, about 6% of the non-biodegradable waste, 6% of the waste can be used. So this is like plastic bottles or cardboard boxes and so on. So that we assume that it goes into material, what is known as a material recovery facility. But all of this was not part of the system boundary. So if any energy was required in material recovery facility or here, again, that was our calculated only after the transportation, again from the society level transportation. Okay. So now here there are 2 transportation operations. One was the transport to the ward level composting facility. So we assume that every ward in Mumbai will have a composting facility. So one transport is from the society level to the composting facility in the ward. So it's a short transport, about 10 kilometers or so, or even less than that. And composting will require some input. So there is fuel, there is electricity that is required. So composting site will require all these things, and they will generate some emissions. So transportation operation will obviously give out emissions because of the trucks. Electricity generation is part of the system boundary, so I am considering all life cycle emissions of electricity. So electricity related production emissions are considered. composting also generates some emissions. Okay, so those emissions are also considered, and you get a product which is compost. So this is a product that you are getting. It's not a waste. Unfortunately, when you do composting, not everything is recovered. There is some material which is called as a reject, and you cannot do anything with it. So we assume that that reject is sent to landfill. So you have original material, non-biodegradable, that anyway is sent to landfill. There are some fuel emissions because of that, fuel consumption and gaseous emissions. And this also comes to landfill, and you have leachate which is generated, and you have leachate treatment, and you have liquid discharge. Okay, so this was the system boundary. Now the point that I mentioned, you will see that we are considering fuel for transportation, but the fuel production itself is not considered. Okay, it's only when I'm burning diesel in the transportation truck, there are some emissions. So we are only considering those emissions. We are not considering the emissions at the time of or during the process of manufacturing diesel. So you can probably make an argument that then it's not really a correct answer, because I am truncating my system boundary. So I'm not being comprehensive, and I agree with that. It's a limitation of this work. So let me explain why we ignored that. Because we did not have the emission information for a refinery located in India. That information is still not available in the database actually. So in the database, there is information related to emissions for diesel production for a European refinery, for a North American refinery, but it is not available for an Indian refinery. Let's say HPCL, BPCL, and Reliance, and so on. Okay, so because we didn't have that accurate information, we thought that let's not consider it in the calculation. So it's a shortcoming. It's something that we have ignored. But as I said in the first lecture, we are acknowledging it, and we are telling it that this is our assumption, and our results are subject to this assumption. Okay. Any questions on this? So this is about system boundary. Any question on this? Fuel in transportation was diesel, because that's the typical diesel, that typical fuel that we use. Okay, so let me move ahead. It's a challenging afternoon session anyway. It's challenging. Okay, so once the system boundary and product system was decided, the next task was to actually do the inventory calculations. And if you remember from the morning session, in the inventory calculation, you basically have to look at each of these boxes and find out what are going to be the emissions. Okay, so I'll show you step by step how we did the calculations. So the first thing was transportation operation. So we assume that the transportation trucks are run on diesel. These are heavy duty vehicles, and we assume that all these trucks comply with the Bharat Stage 4 norms. So the reason we did that was because we had clear numbers that if a truck is compliant with Bharat Stage 4 norms or Euro Stage 4 norms, then what is the emission profile? Okay, because that is essentially what we want to find out. So we have the information that if you, for 1 kilowatt hour of output, what is the emission for different things like CO. So this is carbon monoxide, this is hydrocarbons, unburnt hydrocarbons, this is nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter. And we converted that everything into gram per kilometer using some conversion factors. Okay, this is, we assumed a fuel efficiency of this. All of these numbers are coming from literature, by the way. Okay, basically this is what we wanted to know. So how many grams of CO or hydrocarbon or NOx are emitted when you drive a vehicle, a waste collection vehicle for 1 kilometer. Now, this by itself is not sufficient, because we also need to know the distance that is traveled. Okay, so uh, I think we assumed 50 kilometers. That was the distance. So we assumed that typically the waste dumping facility is outside the city boundary. So we assume that the waste is transported for 50 kilometers. And once we know the distance, we get the total grams of all these pollutants emitted. So my question to you is, can we directly use these numbers for our calculations? After multiplying them by 50, I'll multiply all these numbers by 50. Can I directly use whatever number I get as my inventory? I hope the answer, question is clear. Let me explain this. So let's say we are talking about CO2 emissions. So you get 706 grams per kilometer, and if I'm traveling 70 kilometers, then you get about 3,500 grams. Okay, sorry, 50 kilometers, so 35,000 grams. Can I directly assume that that's my inventory for the for calculation? No. Why? Okay, one is no, if door-to-door collection have different kilometer of transport. So we are ignoring door-to-door collection. So that doesn't matter. Also depends on engine speed, fuel burning. Okay. So by the way, there are a lot of assumptions here. And this is unfortunately a very common thing in any LCS study. Some of the assumptions are, when I say that transportation is for 50 kilometers, obviously every truck will not travel exactly 50 kilometers. So it's an average distance. Second, it depends on the traffic conditions, because your fuel efficiency is a function of traffic. It depends on the condition of the vehicle, how well it is maintained. Not all vehicles will follow the Bharat Stage 4 norms. Maybe some of the older vehicles will have more emissions. But I mean, if you really possible, you should actually get into all these details, but we couldn't. So that's why we made this assumption. Yeah, so generation is different at different speed. We are, when we use this number, we are assuming some standard speed of running, some typical vehicle which is maintained at a particular thing. My question was more about scaling, because see, when I'm taking one truck, so all these emissions are for the transportation of one truck. Okay, so if I drive one truck for 1 kilometer, I emit 706 grams of CO2. But remember, my functional unit is 1 ton. A truck will not transport 1 ton. It will transport a larger quantity. I think it typically transport about 10 tons. Okay, 10 ton is the capacity of a single truck. So for the specific functional unit that we have chosen, we have to scale these numbers down by 10, because a single truck carries 10 tons. My functional unit is 1 ton. So I have to divide everything by 10. And that then I will use in my calculations. Okay. So that was the point I wanted to make, that once you decide your functional unit, you have to make sure that all your emissions are scaled to that functional unit. Otherwise, you will get an error in your calculation. Okay. Okay. So that was about transportation. The second thing was what happens in the landfill actually. So I told you that once you pack everything, you generate the landfill gas is generated. It might be captured, it might not be captured, but in any case, we needed to know how much gas is generated. So here we took help of a model. The model is called as LandGem. Okay, it's a it's basically I think it's an Excel based model, which tells you how much gas is, how much methane and how much CO2 and even trace pollutants are generated. I am only showing methane and CO2 here, but it also tells you a lot of trace emissions that are generated. So this is what you see. So you have methane. Remember, I told you that you are dumping waste for 20 years, and that's why for 20 years your emission keeps increasing. But at year 20, if you stop waste addition, you'll still have some emission. Obviously, the rate will go down because now you don't have any new waste coming in. So your generation will go down, but it will still last for another 20 years or so. And then it becomes almost negligible. Okay. So we basically relied on this LandGem model to know what is the total emission coming out of the landfill. Okay. So as I told you, I'm showing methane and carbon dioxide here, but it also gives you other pollutants also. So this is what you see. So this is again scaled to per ton of waste. This earlier number was total number. That's why you have a very high number here. Everything is now scaled to per ton of waste here. So if you have a simple dump site, you have some methane, some CO2 generation. If you have a landfill, now this is actually very interesting. If you have a landfill, because landfill is kind of sealed, it creates anaerobic condition and the methane production is enhanced. So you have more methane, less CO2 as compared to open dumping. So you can probably say that purely from methane production standpoint, open dumping is better because at least it is generating CO2, not methane. With landfill, it is generating more methane, which is more dangerous from climate change perspective. But of course, open dumping has a lot of other problems. When you do landfill, when you collect the landfill gas and flare it, okay, I told you that you are just burning methane. So a lot of that methane is converted to CO2. So your CO2 emission goes up. There is still some methane for two reasons. But first is you cannot capture all the gas that is generated. There will still be some methane that escapes that cannot be collected by the piping system. That is the main reason, and there might be some inefficient combustion in the flaring system. So that's why there is some methane that is still emitted, but a lot of it is converted into carbon dioxide. So this is the inventory for the landfill in terms of methane and CO2. Okay. And these are the other emitters. Remember, I told you, the inventory calculation gives you a laundry list of pollutants. So this is the laundry list. Okay. These are all the gas or air pollutants that are coming out from the landfill. This is all reported as per the output of the LandGem model. But these are all the trace emissions that are coming out. Acetone, propanol, butane, carbon disulfide, carbon monoxide, all are there. And this is still the partial list because there are 46 other emissions that were reported. 46 total emissions. Okay. Any question on this so far? Okay. So if I go back to the system boundary diagram, so I have done the inventory calculation for transport. I have done the inventory calculation for the landfill itself and the flaring system. Now the third component was leachate treatment. So leachate, fortunately, we found some literature in the Indian context. So there was a study reported in literature for a landfill in Kolkata. So they had actually taken samples of the leachate and done the measurements of the pollutants, both for an active dump site as well as closed dump site. So we took data from there. So these are basically numbers that we got from there. I don't expect you to read all these numbers. The point is, this is the level of detail that is needed when you do inventory calculations. Okay. So these are the different, again, components that are part of the water that is leachate, and the corresponding quantities in the units. Okay. So if you are doing composting, what happens is when you are doing composting, your biological material is taken care of at the composting facility. and the rest goes to the sanitary landfill. So because the landfill is now not handling any biological waste, your leachate composition changes and it doesn't have so many components. So this is for an active dump site or landfill where it also has biological material. But if you have only non-biodegradable material, the leachate, the components which are part of the leachate goes down, and of course the quantity will also go down. So this is the leachate concentration if you have a sanitary landfill which is only treating non-biodegradable material. Okay, so this number was needed for this particular step. Okay, second system, which is composting and landfilling, we needed to know how much leachate is generated and what is the composition. Okay, so let me go to the results now. So I've sort of summarized it because the next step was to put everything together. We used the OpenLCS software, so all these numbers had to be put in the OpenLCS software. We needed to get the electricity consumption in the composting process. We got again that from literature, that was again input in the OpenLC interface. So all that backend work was done. I am not showing all of that. Instead, I'm going to the results section now. So this is the cost part actually. This is not the life cycle assessment part. This is the cost part where I remember I told you that we wanted to know how much is the trade-off between cost and the environmental benefit. So this is for the case of a landfill, proper sanitary landfill, and this is how the cost is broken up in capex and opex. So you have about 291 rupees per ton of every number is for per ton of municipal solid waste. So about 291 is for transportation, 59 rupees for land, 229 for landfilling operation like digging, dumping, and so on. 626 is for leachate treatment. So leachate treatment is very expensive. And 162 rupees for landfill gas flaring. So you'll need to set up some piping system to allow flaring. So this is the total cost. So this is the comparison of the four options now. Okay. So if you have simple open dumping, OD stands for open dumping. Open dumping, I told you, is the most inexpensive operation. You don't need to do anything. Just transport the waste and do some operations in the dumping ground to move the waste around, but that's about it. So unsurprisingly, that is the cheapest operation, 344 rupees per ton of waste. If you have a sanitary landfill with only landfill gas flaring, so there is no leachate treatment, because I told you in the previous case, leachate treatment was quite expensive. So if you have only flaring system, the cost goes to about 741. And of course, you have some additional operations related to landfill preparation. If you have a perfect sanitary landfill, where you have you flare the landfill gas and have leachate treatment, it is the most expensive operation, not surprisingly, because you have these added operations. It is 1300, more than 1300 rupees per ton. And if you have composting and sanitary landfill, surprisingly, it's actually quite cheap. If you have composting at ward level, and by the way, we remember compost comes out as a product, so we assume that there is some revenue that you are getting by selling that compost, and that becomes a revenue for you. So it is accounted for in this calculation. So that comes out to be 531 rupees per kg. It's quite cheap actually compared to sanitary landfill with only landfill gas flaring. So this is the best option up till now. Of course, there is a big if there, because we are assuming that there is perfect perfect source segregation of waste between biodegradable and non-biodegradable, which may not always happen. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. There will always be, first of all, there may not be source segregation. Second, source segregation is generally not perfect. So there will be some problems in the composting process. So I can say that this is a bit of an optimistic number. Okay. But let's get back to the LCA results. This is what is more important for us here. So similar to the cost, this compares the four options. Climate change, I'm showing two numbers here, climate change impact and ozone formation impact. And everything is scaled in terms of open dump, not in terms of open dumping, but it is normalized with respect to the worst case scenario. So I will show the actual numbers later, but this is for the sake of comparison. Okay. So as far as climate change is concerned, open dumping is the worst. A lot of CO2 emissions, methane emissions, and so on. Okay. The climate change impact goes down if you have some sanitary landfill with where you are flaring the landfill gas. So remember, as compared to open dumping, what is happening here is methane output is going down. You are burning methane into carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide has a lower climate change impact. Methane impact is 24 times, and therefore you see this huge reduction. Okay, huge reduction from open dumping to sanitary landfill with gas flaring. When you add leachate treatment to this, there is no change in climate change impact because it is expected. When you add leachate treatment, it is only affecting water pollution. It is not affecting gaseous emissions. Climate change is because of gaseous emissions. That is already taken care of when I do flaring. Leachate treatment gives benefit in some terms of water purity. So that's why this is exactly the same. Fourth case is the best one because there is very little landfill gas generated. I told you that the biological material is already removed. So the generation of landfill gas itself goes down. And therefore, there is significant reduction in climate change impact. Some of this, in fact, is because of transportation of the waste. Okay. You also have a trend for ozone formation. Now, ozone formation is slightly interesting because carbon dioxide has a greater impact. So that's why you see a slightly different trend. But any question on this? Any question on this result? Okay. So what do you expect leachate treatment to reduce? I've already given the answer actually. So let me go to the next set. So this is about freshwater ecotoxicity. Okay. So as you can expect, open dumping, when I add landfill gas flaring, which is converting methane to carbon dioxide, there is no effect on freshwater because it's a gaseous emission. So freshwater ecotoxicity goes down, or in general water pollution goes down when you add leachate treatment. Okay, so this is the reduction. And of course, when you add composting, it further goes down. And this also gets reflected in human toxicity because if water is consumed, if polluted water is consumed by humans, then it is going to lead to human toxicity. And that's why, and when you add leachate treatment, it will make a significant reduction in human toxicity. Okay. So these are the actual numbers. So all these numbers are for 1 ton of municipal solid waste. So if you do open dumping, the emissions are 1240 kgs of CO2 per ton of municipal solid waste. Or in other words, 1.2 tons per ton of waste. That is the CO2 emission or climate change impact. With sanitary landfill and landfill gas flaring, it's 0.8 tons per ton of waste. There is no change if you add leachate treatment. If you add composting, it's about 0.2. So this is obviously the best option. And correspondingly, these numbers are there. Now, so this basically shows the trade-off. See, if I don't have these numbers side by side, but here you see that as far as human toxicity is concerned, there is a huge benefit if you add leachate treatment. As far as climate change is concerned, there is a huge benefit if you have landfill gas flaring. So from an environmental perspective, obviously, as you go from left to right, it becomes better. Okay, the better it has less and less impact for both climate change and water pollution. But cost-wise, I already told you that leachate treatment is very expensive. So this is the trade-off. Now, the open dumping is the cheapest option, but it also has the greatest impact in most cases. Okay, so that is the trade-off that we are talking about. So we were hoping that this could be useful for making some decisions, and this is the indirect impact that I was talking about. That open dumping appears to be cheap because you are ignoring all these other impacts. If there is human toxicity, for example, it will make people sick. So that will mean their productivity goes down. That will actually lead to economic impact. Second, their treatment. So there is some money that's spent on treatment. That's a load to the society. That's a load to the government. So there is some economic impact because of that. So you can have all these indirect economic impacts. And our argument is that if you consider those, open dumping is not really the cheapest option. It's actually a most expensive option. Okay, so any question on this? So there is one question. Composting will only take care of mainly organic waste that gives less climate change impact. Landfill may include other types of waste. What is the selection criteria then between composting and sanitary landfills? Yeah, so composting is better option. If you are able to segregate the waste, okay, if you are able to segregate biological and non-biological waste, composting is the best option. In fact, there is a argument that landfill should really be the last option of waste management. There's a famous pyramid that if you just search land waste management pyramid or something like that, you will see that landfill is typically recommended as the last option because it still occupies land and generates some problem. The better option is to make sure that no waste is getting anywhere. So you segregate the waste between biological and non-biological. Biological waste goes for composting. Non-biodegradable like plastic is combusted. So you can get, let's say, do pyrolysis or gasification, you get some bio oil out of it. Or you at least incinerate the whole thing so you can generate power. Actually, European countries, a lot of these European countries have incinerations, waste incinerators. So they generate electricity or heat out of it. So if your question is about choice, obviously composting is better, but then it is dependent on good source segregation. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Okay. Okay, one more question. We can also segregate non-biological waste and recycle it. Yeah, we can, and we should. Ideally, we should. So plastic versus glass or different types of plastics, that should be done. So see, the main issue with segregation is when you mix everything, it becomes very difficult, and for the person who is segregating, it's not a very hygienic situation. If you have food waste, other kind of waste in there, which is soiling plastic and glass and paper, it is not a very hygienic thing to do. I mean, all of us probably won't like to do that. But if you are able to separate it, you have dry waste, which has only plastic, glass, paper. It's a relatively hygienic thing to do. It's not a big risk health-wise. And it's also, it's a good working condition. So, yes, I mean, there is this whole philosophy of circular economy, which says that nothing should actually go to waste. You try to reuse, recycle as much as possible. So paper can be recycled. And in fact, paper recycling is one very good thing about India. We recycle a lot of paper. But same thing can be done in case of plastic bottles. They can be remolded. One of the reasons single-use plastics are banned is because they are not very convenient for recycling. Other kind of plastics can be recycled provided that we are able to separate it out properly. Plastic again is a very common, very broad term. There are different grades of plastics. Some of them are not very compatible. So PVCs, for example, PVC has chlorine, which puts certain restrictions on the ways in which it can be recycled. Nowadays, people also dump metal, which have high recycling. Well, yes, unfortunately, so the big problems right now are plastic and electronic waste. That's another major concern. Electronic waste is extremely dangerous. Batteries, light bulbs, mobile phones, or anything electronic, that's an extremely dangerous waste. So ideally, we should have a very good e-waste management system. Okay. So the next thing we wanted to I'm almost at the end of the case study. See, we wanted to. I told you that life cycle assessment gives you a number. It doesn't really tell you whether it's good or bad. So we got this number of if you based on the kind of waste management options you have, you get different impacts. And let's talk about climate change. It ranges from about 261 kgs per ton of waste to about 1200 more than 1200 kgs per ton. Now the question is this important? I mean, we are making an argument here that if I have very good waste management facilities, my climate change impact can potentially go down by a factor of 4. It can come down from 1250 to 260. The next question is it worth doing it? Or is this really an important number? Maybe it's such a small fraction of the total GHG emissions that we have that it doesn't really matter. Remember that hotspot thing I talked about. There are a lot of other things that we do in our life that generate CO2 emission. We drive, we consume electricity. So if this contribution is very small, let's say it's 1% of all our activities, we need to focus on something else. So we wanted to get that feel. So unfortunately, we could do it only for climate change because good numbers were only available for climate change. So we looked at what is the per capita GHG emission of an individual, because we already know how much waste an individual is generating, and we know per kg or per ton of waste what is the climate change impact. So we could calculate that on an annual basis what is going to be the climate change contribution of an individual. Okay. So that comes out to be 0.162. And we got some projections for India that how will the per capita GHG emissions change with time. So this number is somewhere between, let's say, 1.5 to about 4. Okay, that is the range in which per capita GHG emissions are predicted to grow for the next 15 years or so, 20 years in this case, but now only last 10 years are remaining. So basically what we could do is we could compare this with this number. And we found out that the annual GHG emissions due to open dumping, which is what happens right now in most Indian cities, what we have is open dumping. So what we could conclude was that can contribute up to 16% of the overall GHG emission of an individual. And that is significant. I mean, that is not something that you can ignore. If it was 1%, less than 1%, we could have said, okay, it doesn't matter. Of course, water pollution is a different aspect. I am not talking about that. Purely from a GHG perspective. And there are other health impacts also, which again I am ignoring here. But this is purely from a GHG perspective. Your open dumping can contribute up to 16% of the total emissions, which is noticeable. And therefore, something has to be done. So it's another argument to support our hypothesis that when you say that open dumping is the cheapest, it's not really the cheapest. It appears to be cheapest because we ignore all these other things. Okay. So any questions on this? This is actually the last slide that I have. Okay, so there's one question looking to the data you showed how composting can impact human toxicity in terms of carcinogenesis. So okay, so the question is about this. Okay, where is this coming from? So let me go back to the product system. this is the product system for that case. Now, where it is coming from is, that's actually a good question. First of all, you are burning fuel. Okay, you are burning fuel for transporting waste into different places, and when you burn diesel, it generates some emissions. I told you the emissions. These are the emissions. Some of them have human toxicity impacts. Okay, so that is one point. Second, I told you that composting requires some electricity. Electricity generation is part of our system boundary, and electricity in India, 60% is coal based. When you burn coal, it releases ash, particulate matter. That again has some human toxicity impact. So these emissions, transport emissions, electricity related emissions. Composting site requires some diesel because you are burning something and so on. Generator sets and so on. So there are some emissions coming from there. The fourth thing is the leachate. So I told you that the amount of leachate generated is very low, and you are actually having some leachate treatment. But the after treatment also, there might be some human health impact, although this is not very significant. The major reason for that non-zero human health toxicity impact is because of the gaseous emissions due to fuel consumption and electricity generation. Okay, I hope that answers the question. So that actually is the life cycle, that is coming because of life cycle perspective, especially the electricity part. So if I can convert that, if the electricity that I'm using is solar electricity, yes, it will go down significantly. Any other question? Okay, so we have subsequently followed that up with another study where we have looked at pyrolysis. Okay, in the first work that we did, we only looked at composting, and otherwise it was just landfill. But another student looked at pyrolysis of mixed waste. In fact, she did as part of her PhD research, she worked on the experimental part as well, where she did experiments related to pyrolysis, and did the LCA and technoeconomics also. So I will not go into the details because we don't have time. But this is basically, it's a much more complicated system boundary and product system, because we have the pyrolysis is a slightly complicated process than composting. Okay, so we have a lot of other operations boxes in here. Go to the result directly. So if you do pyrolysis of the mixed municipal solid waste, the impact was 250 kgs per ton of waste. So the other numbers were, the best case scenario for the earlier study was 260 when you have composting and landfilling. And this case is actually better than the first case. Okay. So we found that this is even better. Pyrolysis is even better in terms of environment. But there are a lot of other challenges with pyrolysis. It's a very capital intensive operation. It relies a lot on consistency of waste, which is a problem. So there are other issues also. Let me not talk about those. Okay. So these were the case studies that I wanted to present. Hopefully it sort of gave you the example of how you do a stepwise LCA study for a particular system. Now we have about 5 to 10 minutes remaining. So I just want to show you the database. I told you that you have to use the database for inventory calculation. Okay. If you don't mind, I'll just take a 1 minute break. I need to get some water. I'm really, my throat is really dry. Okay. Just don't mind. I'll just take a 1 minute break. I'll be quickly back. Sorry about that. Okay. Sorry again for that short break. Um, so let me show you the database how it looks. So I for my own research I use OpenLCA software. It's an open source software for doing life cycle assessment. But the software OpenLCA is only part of the resource that you need, because you also need a database. Okay, so OpenLCA is like an interface. It's a software that allows you to develop your product systems and do the calculations, but you still need the database. You still need the inventory data to come from somewhere, and that is done by the database that you are using. So here I am using EcoInvent database. So we have an educational license for EcoInvent. In fact, it is free for India. If you are using EcoInvent database for research purpose or an educational purpose, basically non-commercial activity, they provide you for free. So if some of you want to do some work, research in LCA, you can actually explore this. You have to do some paperwork and submit and basically prove that you are an academic employee, and they will give you access for free. Okay, so that's how we do it for our research. We use this database. So I told you that the database provides information about the various inputs. So let me show you example. So this is a very comprehensive database. So it tells you the information is classified into different categories. So for example, you have agricultural and forestry related products, mining and quarrying, manufacturing, electricity, gas, and so on. So let us say you want to know one of the input to your system is electricity. Okay. And electricity, I'm taking electricity because it's a very common input. It's almost anything that you do, you need electricity. Okay. Now, as I said, I don't want to go back to the power plant and find out what is their emission profile. So I will go to the database and find out what is the typical emission inventory for electricity. Okay. So you can do a search also, but I'll show you stepwise. So you can go to electricity. There are different options here. So these are all the different options. So you see there is data for electricity production from hard coal. There is data from hydro based electricity production. There is data for lignite based electricity production, natural gas based electricity production, wind based production, and so on. Okay. So depending on the if you know that, okay, you have a power plant which is using natural gas as a source, then you can use the emission inventory specific to that source. Okay. So the electricity generation, actually I'm also picking up electricity because electricity is for which there is a lot of accurate data available in the database. Okay. So you see that it is classified based on different sources of fuel for electricity production. You also see these symbols here, CZ, DE, DK, and all. So these actually tell you for which country this number is valid. Okay, if I take coal-based, for example, now coal quality is different in different countries. The power plants are less or more efficient. So even if two countries have coal-based power plant, it doesn't mean that they have the same emissions. The emissions could still be different. So this extension, sort of these 2 digits or 2 or 3 digits, tell you the country for which data are valid. And IN stands for India. So if I want to know what is the electricity, what is the emission because of electricity production using hydro, which is set up on a river in India, I will use this particular data. Okay. If I know that it is actually a natural gas plant, then I have to go to that particular natural gas combined cycle power plant in India. Okay. Now, it may also happen that you don't know what is the source. You might be taking the electricity from grid. Let's say you are doing an LCA for a mobile phone. During the use phase, you need electricity for charging, and you don't really know where the electricity is coming from. Also, let's say you want your result to be applicable to any part of the country. So in some regions, maybe coal-based is primary source. In some regions, maybe hydro has more fraction and so on. So you don't really know where it is coming from. So what do you do in this case? Fortunately, there is an option in the database for that also. So they will tell you about production mix. Okay, so let me open this. So this basically is the emission. This entry in the database gives you emission for 1 kilowatt hour of electricity production, assuming a typical production mix. So in India, they would have known that about 60% comes from coal. I think about 12 to 14% is hydro, some 5-6% is wind, some 5% is solar, some biomass, and so on. Nuclear is about 2 to 3%. So they will know all this distribution for every type of power plant. They will know the emissions, and they will do a weighted average and give us a number. Now this is useful for us because then we get an average number that we can use in our studies. Okay. So that's what we typically do, because when we do an LCA study for a product or a process, we don't really know in which region it will be set up, what will be the source of electricity. We only know that it is set up in India. So we generally use this particular number. Any question on this? We are almost approaching the end. But any question on this? Maybe some of you have used database. Any questions? Okay. While I am on database, let me also tell you one of the problems with the database. I told you that it's about regional data availability. I told you in the morning that data for India is not available. So let me show you an example here. So I'm talking about basic chemicals manufacturing. And let's say I'm talking about sulfuric acid, something that I have mentioned a couple of times. So here you see for sulfuric acid, there are two entries. One is RER, which is Europe, and second is ROW, which is rest of the world. So there is no entry for India. For electricity, there was entry for India, and I could use India specific number. But for sulfuric acid and for most other chemicals, there is no entry for India here. So in such cases, the way around is to use the rest of the world number. It's not perfect, I agree. Rest of the world may not actually match the number that the emission that a typical Indian plant will generate. But if something is better than nothing, that is the philosophy that is often used in LCA. You don't have number for India, okay, let's use rest of the world number. The only thing is, make it explicitly clear when you are writing it up or when you are presenting it, clearly state that you are using rest of India, rest of world number, and not India specific number. So it will not be accurate, but it will give you some ballpark figure. It may not be very different from the global average. Okay. Let's actually do a calculation for sulfuric acid. I'll show you how the calculation is done in the so if I take this rest of the world process, then it gives you, the database gives you all the inputs that are there in the process in the life cycle of sulfuric acid production. So these are all the inputs that go into sulfuric acid manufacturing. 1 kg, all these numbers are for 1 kg of 100% acid. These are all the emissions in the life cycle, by the way. All the upstream emissions are included here. sulfur recovery, sulfur mining, and everything is included here. So if you want to do the actual impact calculations, you create a product system. Uh, it's a little bit slow on my laptop. Uh, so it's oftentimes when the database is large and if your product system is large, it gets into computational issues. If there are any questions in the meantime, you can go ahead and ask. It takes a couple of minutes. Okay, one question: are part or any of the predicted impacts practically validated or quantified anyways? Okay. So see, some impacts like water depletion or fossil depletion can actually be verified, because these are in terms of quantities, so many meter cube of water or so many kgs of fossil fuel used. So those can be validated. Human health is actually a bit challenging because uh, human health impacts are not very easy to validate. And that's because the effect of a pollutant on a human well-being or human health is very uncertain. See, there are 91 people in this meeting. If all of us are exposed to the same level of same pollutant, we will respond differently. It depends on the our immunity, our genetic makeup. Maybe we have some other issues. So each of us will respond differently. So when it comes to health, human health, it is difficult to validate. So you have to rely on models which are developed using lab scale studies, which are typically done on animals. So the animal study exposure studies are typically done on animals like rats, and you extrapolate that information to humans. So there it is difficult to, almost impossible to validate. You have to just rely on the models. But as I said, there is a lot of work going on in improving these models. The impact assessment model themselves are continuously improved. Okay, let me go back to the product system. So this is the product system, and let me click calculate. Again, I hope it will work. So these are all the impact assessment methods. I told you that there are several impact assessment methods which are already there in the software. And as a user, you don't have to develop the methods. So these are all the methods that are available. Let's use ILCD, which is the one that we have used in the past. Okay, so these are the emissions. So the calculation has been done. Everything is for 1 kg of sulfur trioxide. I think I picked the wrong process. I picked sulfur trioxide instead of sulfur dioxide. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, so these are the this is the inventory I talk about. So life cycle inventory gives you all these laundry list as I'm talking about. These are all the emissions that are coming out from the inventory calculation. And the impact assessment, the method that I chose, ILCD, converted all these numbers into impact categories, and that impact analysis is given here. So these are the impact categories that are important. So it tells you that, for example, 1 kg of sulfur trioxide leads to about 0.569 kgs of CO2 emissions. Now equivalent. So at least I have fewer things to compare. There are the things that make sense, like climate change, land use, resource depletion, fresh water. These are things that we can make sense of compared to these numbers. Okay, so that's the value of doing impact assessment. So I will stop here. No, I don't have anything else to present. Of course, this is a very, very superficial introduction to the whole concept of LCA, also this database. But if you are interested, you can contact me separately. I will give you additional resources. I have already told you a couple of books on LCA that you can use. Just one more thing before I conclude. This is what I showed the last page, I actually this the full semester course that I teach uh, um, on sustainable engineering, and LCA is one major part of it. It is now being beamed on Swayamprabha. So uh, if you are interested and if you have access to Swayamprabha DTH channel, you can probably listen to those videos. I also have a Facebook page where I basically it's a page for my course. I post relevant information uh, that is so any newspaper article or any other news that is relevant for the course. I also use this to announce any courses that we are conducted at IIT Bombay. So we periodically, unfortunately, because of COVID, we are not doing anything this time. Otherwise, in every December, we conduct a course on sustainable engineering. Um, but if there are any courses that are being offered, we generally announce on this website or Facebook page. So this is just for your information. I'll stop here. If there are any questions, I will. And by the way, I'll send these slides to the organizers. If you are interested, you can get access to these slides. So my email ID is y.shastri at iitb.com. Sorry, yshastri at iitb.ac.in. So if you are interested, if you are working in this area, for example, please feel free to contact me.
One question that can you comment on the issue of allocation?
Okay, that's actually an important topic which I didn't cover. So let me, for the sake of others, let me just very quickly explain what it is. So basically, if you have, let me just show you one example. So the point here is that you often have processes which generate multiple products, like a refinery. Okay, refinery generates petrol, diesel, jet fuel, and lube oil. So how do you divide the impact? Because you are getting multiple products. So that is the topic of allocation. Uh, so a simple example can be, you have 150 kgs of CO2 being emitted. You have two different products. How much of this 150 should be allocated to P and how much should be allocated to Q? So there are two approaches that are recommended as per the ISO guideline. One is partitioning, second is displacement. In partitioning, you basically use some kind of uh, attribute like mass based. So if it's 40 kg of P is generated, 200 kg of Q is generated, you divide this 150 based on this weight or mass ratio. You can also use economic allocation where you also take into account the revenue that is generated because of P and revenue that is generated because of Q, and you divide this 150 based on the revenue. Use the ratio. So generally, money or economic based allocation is recommended, although it's not. I mean, some people do mass based allocation also. Energy based allocation can be done only if all your products are energy products like petrol, diesel, jet fuel, and so on. Okay. So in short, that is the answer. That partitioning is allocation is an important problem that is encountered, and these are some of the ways you can address that.
Anything else from participants? I think most of the questions were answered in green. There's not so many questions.
Okay.
So, we'll stop here, sir. And I'm really again thankful to you, Dr. Shastri, for accepting our invitation for this conference. Before that, earlier also told that
I'm not able to hear you properly.
One second, sir.
I think you probably need to hold it closer to your the microphone closer.
Hello. Is it okay, sir?
It's better. Uh,
Hello.
okay, so there is a question: what will be LCO of virtual FDP and physical FDP? Uh, Obviously, a virtual FDP will have lesser impact. Okay, so you will have, and the main saving will be travel. So you'll save a lot of emissions because of travel. Um, so clearly and purely from an environmental perspective, a virtual FDP is better. But then I think the purpose of an FDP is much more than, or at least more than the just actual learning, no? Because you get to meet other people and through discussions. I mean, normally what happens when we consider when we have a physical FDP or when we have conduct courses in our department also during lunch or tea breaks, there's a lot of discussion that happens, which is actually also very useful beyond the classroom teaching part. So there, it's actually there is a drawback. So you can never replace physical one-to-one interaction, but purely from an LCA perspective, yes, virtual is better.
Okay. Sir, am I audible?
No, actually, it's still some disturbance actually.
Hello. Jyoti. Jyoti. Hello.
Hi, it's better now. So you can go ahead.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah, yeah, I think we can hear you now.
Okay, sir. So, sir, there does not seem any questions now. Most of the questions have been answered in between. So, we will stop here. So, once again, thanking you, sir, on behalf of all the coordinators, on behalf of all the participants and the FDP. And you have tried your best to condense this 4 week course in 6 hours. It's really difficult, but still you have tried a lot and you have at least made the participants aware, those who are not aware about LCA so far. Some of them might be already aware about this topic, which is very hot topic nowadays. So we hope that participants will might have gained a lot of insight into this course, particularly this topic, LCA. Okay, and we also given some tips of the open source softwares that might help the participants who want to explore this new area. So I once again thank you, sir, for giving an opportunity and accepting our invitation for this expert session, for 2 sessions. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, thanks a lot for inviting me. It was a pleasure, and I'm just glad that there are so many people who are interested in this kind of a topic. So it looks good for the overall sustainability community. So as I said, my email was there. If you have any further questions or need additional resources, please feel free to contact.
Sir, we have also shared whatever forward you have sent me via WhatsApp. We have WhatsApp group of all the participants. So
Okay,
the announcement of your course on that Swayam Prabha, we have
okay,
already
okay, great.
shared with the participants. So that will also help the participants.
Okay, okay, great, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
So, and I will send the slides to you. So maybe you have.
Yeah, sir, we do have Google Classroom. So we are
Ah,
uploading this PDF of all the PPTs.
okay,
So
okay.
we
So
are
I
uploading.
will send this by today evening.
Okay, sir.
And then you can share it with them.
No problem. Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye. So, all the participants, I hope you are ready for the quiz. So within 2 minutes, I think we will share the link with you, It will be sent via WhatsApp, it will be sent to your email ID, as well as it will be sent via assignment link on the Google Classroom also. Okay? So get ready within 2 minutes. You have to finish it within 15 minutes. Any problem, then let me know.